Welcome back, Dragon Ballers, to Get the Mic, the only show where your host on the left, Owl,
And your host on the right, Brock.
dissect fiction for its mythological significance. On this episode, we're talking about part 2 of episode 62 of Dragon Ball, The Sacred Water. And a little bit of a preface before we continue. We had a slight issue with our technology, let's say. And so a lot of the last episode, probably the last 30 minutes, was corrupted in the audio file. So we're going to go ahead and redo those parts and re-upload it as one.
Mm-hmm. It sounded terrible for the few of you who heard it before.
Yeah. It's been changed now, so you can't even find that version of it.
We'll make sure not to destroy your ears again like we did before.
Trying not to. The problem is it's really hard to see once we get recording for a little bit. The storage on our device is such that it kind of can get laggy either way. Even if the mics are working, it'll look laggy. But if they're not working, it could be doing exactly what it was doing last time.
Right, there's a lot of blackouts of information, so we try to make sure it doesn't happen.
Anyhow, we're going to go ahead and get into the episode. So, this is The Sacred Water. Now, we first see at the base of the tower, Upa adorns his father's mound with flowers and promises that Goku will return stronger than ever before. On the tower, Goku finds himself out of breath again, and Korin says it's time to get some rest. While sleeping, Goku dreams of Upa and stirs awake, saying he's thirsty. He opens the pot, which he gazed into previously to see the present, and once again sees Bulma. This time she's trying to guide Roshi and Launch exercising, and they're not following her movements accurately. Goku states that's it, and begins to imitate Korin's breathing as he sleeps. And I would say not just his breathing, but his mannerisms,
all of his
like
mannerisms,
everything,
yeah.
right?
Well, he starts with his breathing, and then he's
Yes.
able to afterward.
And I think that's for a reason we'll get into in just a second. By morning, Goku has synced his actions up perfectly with Korin.
Mm-hmm.
So here, first of all, we do get this glimpse of Upa having that faith, that has that maturity of responsibility that he has to carry on, despite the fact that his father has passed, let's say.
Right, and he's got a little stick coming up out of the... Or has he done that yet?
Mm-hmm.
But as he builds it, he puts the stick in the mound pointing straight up.
At this point, there's like flowers growing on the mound and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a little symbolic to say that the seed of life is within that interaction with the chaotic here that we're seeing Goku interface with.
Right, I like that it's this sort of microcosm too of the of Korin Tower, right, where we've got a tiny tower that he's praying to, not really praying to, but he's talking to his father while looking at it, and it's like it's symbolically gazing up the tower, right?
It's a tower in spirit,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, right? Yeah. And like I was saying, on the tower though, where Goku is interacting with this unknown force to him, let's say, he's out of breath. And that's how we kind of start this little section of clips, is that Goku is out of breath, right?
Right.
The breath which gives life, right? Which is life. Goku is running out of because he can't keep up with Korin trying to get this sacred water.
Right. It's with breath being associated with spirit and people's ability to speak, let's say, right? Breath is... I think that symbolically, I think of speech as us figuring out the proper use of breath to create order from chaos, right? And that's how you use your breath, is you do that, and that's why you have magic words, let's say. And so it's really the spirit beneath your ability to do that.
Like, think about the phrase, like, with someone's dying breath,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Or with bated breath. And
that's
always
what they say, right? It's always followed with what they say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was instantly
reminded.
I
see what you mean.
Yeah. It's not just like with their final breath.
It's not just like
they breathed out and that was it. It's like with their final breath, they uttered one last thing into the world, right? They made one last manifestation of order into the chaos that has manifested before them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, exactly that. And so Goku is out of that spirit let's say. He's kind of used all of his tricks to manifest his own order on the chaos he's experiencing, in the form of the after image technique, right?
Right.
Um,
Which was too much.
yeah, in Corny instantly just like throws that aside. But so he's out of that, and it's Corin realizes that he needs to be able to kind of reassess, and especially because it's nighttime at this point, I think it's a good interface of that chaos because things happen at night that allow the unknown to come to fruition. Let's say.
Right. There's definitely this feeling of night being the gate into chaos, right? And you're interfacing truly with the unknown, you know. You could say not hindered by your senses, and so you're able to take in what is not rather than what is.
Well, also we sleep at night, right?
Mhm.
We take in the whatever manifests dreams, which is still an unknown thing, right?
Right.
So whatever that is something that we as people encounter, and not even people, animals dream. So like all these creatures encounter this unknown spirit, which induces this interface with the world.
Right. It's almost a manifestation of potential,
Hmm.
right?
And so Goku would do well by interfacing with that, and Korin understands that. So he tells them that it's time to go to sleep. Tells Goku it's time to go to sleep. And while Goku's sleeping, he has these dreams. Now, these dreams are important because they're of Upa, right? And they're of Tao. I believe Tao's in it, right? Yes.
Mhm.
And so he can't sleep. And I think what we were talking about,
Well,
and
is Tao in his dream here?
is he?
No.
Oh, no,
All
no.
he sees is Upa running and the explosion of flowers, right? Which I
Hmm.
guess could be, we could dig into what the meaning of the flowers sort of bursting
Right.
there
We were saying
would
those
be.
flowers is like the seed of potential that arises
Mhm.
from that suffering and pain that transformatively people have to go through.
Right, and that's sort of that cultivation coming into the language, right?
And so it's a destruction of that by Tao, though. I mean, implicitly.
Mhm.
I mean, what else is gonna go mess up with Upa right now? And so Goku can't sleep. And I think of the
Mhm.
first part you were talking about Goku not being able to sleep, because of his attachment to Upa. Was that
Partially,
right?
it's not necessarily it
Okay, go
because
ahead. Go ahead and say what you
right.
were going to.
The I want to tie this back into what we had talked about with the centipede before, right? So the centipede springs up whenever he tries to see the future, and it binds him. And then he sees that's whenever he sees everybody, right? So he sees Yamcha and Bulma, and then I think he sees Puer and Oolong. Then he sees Roshi, Launch, and Krillin, I believe. And then he sees Upa and Bora, and then Tao Pai Pai, and then finally the vision of the future, right? But
Mhm.
it's really cloudy. And sort of my interpretation is that Goku is not fully integrated with himself. He's a bit disintegrated in that sense.
He
His
hasn't
identity,
individuated, I
yes,
believe is what you said.
right. His identity is tied up in too many other people and what he thinks is good and what he thinks is bad, bad. What and what he strives to be is tied up in a lot of that, right? And he needs to be able to elevate that identity above that. And so he's not able really, let's say, to see his future because his future can't be certain because he's pulled too many different directions, so to speak. He's not a unified identity. He hasn't individuated. So thinking along those terms, though, that we had talked about, Korin told him, well, it's time to rest now, right? It's tied into that, what Roshi had taught him originally that I think Roshi learned from Korin, which is the move well, eat well, rest well, right? So he fed him well, but his rest the first time he came wasn't well, right? He just passed out. Um, this time he's resting. We see that he's awoken by something like a nightmare, right? It seems like it stirs him awake, and then that's when he says he's thirsty. And I think it's sort of tied into that idea of resting well, and it's Goku has to be able to integrate when when he's resting, getting out of his own way and really being able to take in the unknown as well. And so he seems somewhat conflicted. But the thing is that the thing that's conflicting him is his salvation, right? That even whenever he's not resting perfectly, let's say, perfectly like Corin would, and that's, tied into how he's working towards getting the water, he needs to go through this process so that he can figure out how to elevate his gaze, right? To ascend to a better type of rest.
And I think this is where I had somewhat of a different interpretation, because I think that Goku being thirsty, right, is that desire to interface with the unknown
Mm-hmm.
so that he can bring back divine knowledge that will allow him to proceed to complete the goal that haunts him right now, which is the loss of Upa, right? Upa and because I mean, if Upa dies, and the flowers are kind of indicative of that too, then there's no point in reviving the spirit of the father, because that reverence is instantiated symbolically through the generational respect and um what do I want to say, respect and reverence towards
Mm-hmm.
the paternal. And so that's what haunts Goku, is that he's not going to be able to redeem the father. And so why I think he's unable to rest is because he doesn't have an answer for that right now.
Mm-hmm.
And he needs to interface with the unknown. And it's kind of like the Rolling Stones song, you can't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need, right? He's looking for an answer to his nightmare in the water, but he
Right.
finds an answer to the water in his nightmare. Wait, not in his nightmare, but in the pots.
Right. He does find what he's searching for, and it's very dreamlike in a sense. It's almost as if this could have been a dream.
Yeah.
And in his ability to focus himself while he's asleep on the right thing, then is able to get to where he is with Corin synced up, right?
Right, and like so I don't mean to say that his nightmare is what led him to copy Corin,
Mhm.
right? His nightmare is what allowed him to interface with the unknown, and the unknown in the water, exactly, in let's say embodied by Bulma, because
Mhm.
Bulma is that yin to Goku's yang. Is that right, or did I get them opposite?
Um I think that's right.
Yeah, and so she's the one that points it out, right? And it's not the knowledge that he needs to like defeat Tao, but it's the knowledge that he needs now.
Right. And the knowledge he needs now is s- the it's the game of games, so to speak. It
Hmm.
is the whole tower and not just the highest rung of the tower that he's experienced.
It's not just a game, it's a spirit. It's a
Mhm.
mode of being that you have to adopt now, right? It's not just deliver the milk, it's be
It's
this.
being able to contextualize a game that integrates everything towards success or towards,
Hmm.
well, you could call it operative success, but heightening your mode of being as a game.
Right. And what Goku sees is exactly why he's able to do it, because Bulma is trying to teach Roshi and Launch
Hmm.
how to exercise, and they're not following her at all.
Right. At first they're
And
not, and then they start to sync up with her, and then he says, "That's it."
and once they sync up, they start being able to be successful in that, right?
Hmm.
And so it's that microcosm that Goku can internalize, that's why he says that's it. And then he starts copying Korn. So I think that's pretty much. And by the morning, he's perfectly synced up.
We see that he doesn't have to gaze over at him anymore to imitate him. He seems to be sleeping and is the same as Korin.
Right. And so by the time the sun rises on the third day, Goku gazes into the morning sun, and he tells Korin that today he will get the water. He chases after him much more closely than before, and by that I mean Goku chases Korin much more closely than before. And just as it seems that he'll be able to reach the water, Goku turns and tickles Korin, surprising him and making him laugh, and drop his staff as well. Korin drops the sacred water off the side of the tower, but Goku dives over the side, catching it and hanging from the railing by his tail. Korin appears to be astonished that it only took 3 days for Goku to get the water. Goku chugs the water and comments that he doesn't feel any stronger. Korin reveals to them it's just regular water, and the trips up the tower have multiplied Goku's strength. So let's start at the beginning there.
Mm-hmm.
Goku gazing at the sun in the very beginning. He is oriented in the way that is proper for the Logos, right? After sleeping and after doing what the sun does, right, which is combating the evil spirits while it's under the earth until it rises again the next day, which
Mm-hmm.
is what Goku has done, right? He's combated this idea, this challenge that he's been presented with in the night, and now he's ready to face it in the day, head on, in a logos sense. And so
It's,
he
he's
gazes
really
into the sun.
he's really channeling his Solaire here, right?
Yes, definitely. If only he could be so incandescent.
Mm-hmm.
So he also tells Korin he is the Logos by proclaiming this and speaking it forth into the world, right? He says he's going to get the water today.
He proclaims it to be true, right?
Yes. And so even as they start, it's clear that Goku has stepped up his game. And he chases Korin really closely and tricks him in the last minute to tickle him and make him drop the water. So the tickling, right, is that call to the involuntary, and I think this is what we were saying in part 1,
Right.
right? The
So
involuntary response.
yeah, a continuation of that use of breath, right? And this is your body using the breath for you. It's not it's if you've ever seen a really left wing comedian, they get a lot of claps and less laughter, right? It's an applause because you can choose to clap, right? You can't truly choose to laugh because a
Right.
laugh is something that comes from within, comes from your body. It's something that is like an insight into something that you find joy in.
Right, and it's funny because people can sometimes get so carried away in their laughter they can't stop,
It can
right?
take control of
It
them.
really can. And so Goku's ability to manipulate this, right, is because he has incorporated that knowledge. It's almost like incorporating the knowledge of good and evil because he's incorporated the knowledge of what can affect one spirit, what can affect my spirit can affect another spirit, and I can use that against other people.
Right. It is truly tied into that idea that until you've integrated how terrible you can be, you do not know how good you can be,
How
right?
terrible tickling can be. But it's true
Well,
because
it's so terrible it makes
it's
him
a
drop the
loss of
staff.
control. Right, exactly. And so Goku dives over the side to catch it, and Korin thinks he's a goner, but his tail saves him. His tail catches him on the railing.
hmm And so then he dangles from his tail, holding the staff, and he says, "I fooled you."
It's almost only because he's tickled him that that's able to even happen.
Right, and it's a joke. He says, "Fooled you." It's a misdirect, and that's partially. I mean, Goku does it by physically grasping him, right? But that is part of why the
Grasping the
laugh.
spirit,
Yeah,
right?
that's why the laugh has to be the thing, you know. And I can't wait to get back to this concept of the laugh much later. But right here, we see it for the first time with Korin, and we're gonna see it echoed in his future masters. Let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh, I see what you mean.
and so
The
it's
laugh.
it's great. It's great how
It's
they use it
divine,
here.
right? Because
hmm
that comedy is that speaking truth.
Right, and
And the fact that Korin is comedic, right?
it's true. He says a lot of one-off jokes,
He
very
makes
efficient
jokes, yeah.
humor, right? In the way that he'll say something like, "You're not that bright, are you?" Right? He doesn't really have to frame a joke. The joke is in. He reveals the joke in the situation, so to speak.
Right. The joke is occasionally sometimes at Goku's expense, his unreadiness or his lack of experience, whatever. But at any rate, he does say that it was a trick and that he got the jar and now he's gonna drink it, right?
hmm
And so as he does, he doesn't feel any stronger. And Korin tells him that it's the trips up and down the tower, which is an interesting way to put it, right?
Right.
It's more or less saying that your multiple attempts at elevating your aim have made it easier for you to do so.
Right, and that's not to say that Roshi came to the tower and stayed up here for years, right? It could have been an intermittent attempt that took 3 years, right? Goku only had to climb back up the tower one time to get the water, to truly get the water, right? I mean, we don't really know necessarily that what the process is for somebody and how many attempts it takes to be able to understand the game of elevating your vision. Um, and so, but I like the idea that in the success there is a fall, right? That there is a redemption aspect of him being able to do it. That he didn't just get it by climbing it the one time. I think it makes it that much more sort of relatable to what the experience really is
Well,
to do
that's
that.
that's the thing also that Goku learns is like that's not just your first attempt isn't always going to be the one that is successful. Um, and that's what I mean by saying it's the practice. Being able to practice elevating one's aim and aiming at the right thing that takes practice, and that's kind of what's spelled out here is that it's not a spirit doesn't gain in strength by aiming at the wrong thing, but it also takes practice to aim at the right thing.
I would sort of disagree with that because there is an idea that a spirit aimed at the wrong thing can grow in power substantially by that focus, right? And that focus that we've talked about with that ultimate refinement and cultivation and being able to point yourself into a single point. And I think
Well,
that's
what I
what
mean is,
Tao's
but
representing.
grow in strength. I mean, grow in moral strength,
Sure.
and I
Elevate,
think that
yeah.
would clear up
A
exactly that
moral
because then I
elevation, yeah.
think you would agree, right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree in that sense.
that's what I meant.
Gotcha.
So and also Goku's ability to then grasp a spirit that is elevated higher than his,
Hmm.
right?
And
And
make it reveal its true self to him.
yes, that is all part of it, and that has is how Goku is now so strong. And so, let's get to our last point. Yeah, we're almost done here. So, Mercenary Tao has received payment for his new clothing back in the desert city. He says that it's exactly to his specifications. When the tailor asks him for payment, Tao scoffs that he would take money from the world's greatest assassin. The tailor says that he has to make a living, and Tao offers to kill anyone for him as payment. When the tailor says that he doesn't want anybody dead, Tao tells him that he will die instead. He kills the tailor with a single finger to the forehead and tells him to keep the change. Goku begins his trip down the tower as Tao picks up his pillar and launches himself back into the sky, both of them on a collision course of destiny. And so this is just kind of the end here. We just do get to see a little bit more of Tao and how he has that sadistic against being adversarial mode, right? Where here there's no reason for him to kill the tailor. He doesn't get any money from it, right? He's not being paid by Red to kill the tailor. He does it because he's insulted that someone would expect a proper mode of being from anyone else.
Right. He has truly embraced the nihilistic power dominance theory of the world, right? Which is to say that because I am the best at exerting my spirit in this direction, let's say, that everyone is beneath me. This is the top of my world, so to speak. And that's what he truly channels his spirit into, right? And he's refined his ability to do that down to the point that most of the attacks, if not all of the attacks we've seen so far from him, are down to a single essentially a single point,
A
right?
single point of malice, because one point of contact is enough to kill most people
Hmm.
of the real malice of
If it's
humanity.
oriented toward being truly destructive, being truly evil.
Yeah. And that's what Tao has been able to do so efficiently.
Hmm.
And so he has only, let's say, emboldened or let's say bulked up his own spirit here in the desert city, being treated like a king, right?
Hmm.
Going about doing what he likes, thwarting assassins' attempts at stopping him and killing tailors who demand payment for their work.
Hmm.
So he is on the path back to Korin's land so that he can finish the job on Goku.
So one connection between the tailor and what's been going on up here as well that I do want to point out is that what Tao has done to the tailor is he's forced him for 3 days to focus on doing one thing, right? And it's a real parallel to what Goku has done. He's really tried to focus himself on one thing, and has become one thing as a result, right? And so Tao is making a mockery of that, right? He takes the tailor and makes him do that and focus himself into a thing of beauty, and he praises it as beautiful. He says, "This is exactly what I wanted, and I will kill you anyway," right? He is that is very against being.
Right. It's almost to destroy the idea of bettering oneself as being a worthwhile endeavor.
Hmm.
And so, also, I do want to say, and I don't know if we mentioned this already. I can't quite remember, but the hole in Goku's attire, he never asks Korin to fix.
Hmm.
It's not something that he's supremely concerned about. And it is kind of a contrast and a juxtaposition of their two identities and how one is pro being and one is anti being and one is vain and one is not, right?
One is revealed as what it truly is, and one proclaims what it is.
Right. And so we're going to see them collide next episode
Oh, I'm
once
ready.
again. All right. Well, I think that's pretty much it, right?
Hmm.
All right. Well, if you enjoyed what you heard, please give us a like, subscribe. We upload Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday on YouTube, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on Rumble. And give us a subscribe if you're over on Rumble.
Or give us a grumble.
Or give us a grumble. Give us a comment if you disagreed or agreed with whatever we had to say. And again, we apologize for the part 2, but we hope you enjoyed it. I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brock.
We hope you guys have a good night.
Ah, me, ah, me, That was incredible. Can you teach me how to do that? Sure, but it'll take you 50 years to learn the Kamehameha wave. Oh, 50 years. You blew up our car, you dummy! Oh, but it wasn't even close to what the turtle hermit did. Let's go, grandson. What? Goku is Gohan's grandson? Yes, but I thought you knew that already. No, I didn't. Oh, I remember Gohan speaking of a child with a tail. So that's him, huh? Gohan must be training the boy himself. So tell me, kid, how is your grandpa doing? Grandpa died a long time ago. Oh, I see. I'm very sorry to hear that. Hey, I've got a great idea. Why don't you come to stay with me on my island and I'll train you personally? It would be a great honor to have the same teacher my grandpa had.
Far away, in an enchanted land that seemed untouched by the steady march of time, there lived an old master named Gohan, who found a baby boy abandoned in the wilderness of the region. The old master raised the boy as his own child, and marveled as the youngster grew and became uncommonly strong. Now the boy, known as Goku, is on his own, and has become the sole guardian of his grandfather's most mystical possession, his Dragon Ball.